From the Dean E. Smith Center in Chapel Hill, this is TarHeelIllustrated.com, Three Things. I'm staff writer Chelsea Sipple. This is Tar Heel Illustrated publisher Andrew Jones. And let's talk about Carolina's 86-70 win against Louisville. And Jalen Withers, what a game. 15 points, 10 rebounds, his own record against his former team. And speaking of that, let's talk about this explosive start that Carolina had. AJ, in the first 9 minutes, they had 26 points. I mean, what a start.
Yeah, I think it was 26-12 or something like that, 9 minutes in. One of my measuring sticks, Chelsea, for if a team is a legitimate contender or not, is not often when they play the best teams, but it's when they play teams that they kind of know that they should beat, when everyone expects them to roll. And when you come out and you out of the gate and you're ready to roll like they were Saturday against Syracuse, that's a great sign. They did it again tonight. I know that they took their foot off later in the game, but they came out on fire, ready to roll, ready to pounce. And what that tells me is that this team has reached a point where they make it about themselves. It's not so much about the opponent. They're going to scout opponents. They're going to be prepared for opponents. They're going to know tendencies, and certain opponents are going to get them a little more jacked up than others. But they have shown in the last two games that they know how to make it about themselves. And they're going to need to do that in this league because this league is cannibalizing itself. It's flipped on its head in certain parts of the standings. And the Tar Heels are going to need to be that team to get through the league to maintain that edge because it's going to be a different deal when they get in the NCAA tournament. By the time they get to the Sweet 16, if they get that far, they're going to mostly play teams that are not like teams in the ACC because the league is just not that good. So they showed me a championship fiber, and we talked about it in Three Things on Saturday. And they showed me that coming out of the gate tonight. They were clicking, man. Armando had 5 assists in the first half. I keep telling people Armando's not concerned with a lot of statistical type things. He just wants to win. He wants to make winning plays. He continues to do that, and he's still climbing up the statistical chart. Harrison Ingram played with tremendous fire and intensity early in the game, grabbing some tough rebounds, getting some buckets in the lane, and then they're finding Cormac Ryan for catch and shoot threes. When this team is finding dudes for catch and shoot threes on the perimeter, when they're defending, they're hitting the glass, they are an excellent basketball team. They are the kind of team that could go to Phoenix. And they were that team for most of the first half. They're up 20 with a minute left in the half. And what we'll talk about in a minute, then Louisville kind of went on a run. Carolina enabled some of that, but you got to credit Louisville for some of it. But you got to like the way the Tar Heels started. You got to like the way a lot of different guys were scoring. It wasn't the RJ show. I wrote in our three keys before the game that they needed Ryan and Ingram to get some offensive mojo going. I think Ingram had 7 at the half. So if you get 19 from those two in the first half of any ACC or any game moving forward, I think that they'll take that, stick it in their back pocket and run. So they got that early on. It was a good sign. There's a lot they could pick at for the rest of the game, but I think the way they came out is an indication that this club is focused, they're prepared, they're ready to play. They have a winner's mentality, and they know at this point now they have such extreme confidence that if they take care of what they need to do, they're going to be in good shape against virtually every opponent they play the rest of the way, certainly in the regular season.
Absolutely. I mean, what a fun start, for Carolina fans in this environment. Now, going on later into the game, Louisville did go on a 24-9 run, and Hubert Davis credits this to Carolina's, fallback in defense again. Kind of talk about, that run Louisville took and what it means for Carolina and how they fixed it.
Yeah, it was 46-26 with a minute left in the first half. And next thing you know, maybe 10 minutes into the second half, it's 55-50. Louisville made a push, a 24-9 run. They hit 9 of their first 10 shots in the second half. When I asked a few of the players about it, when we were talking to players after the game about what happened, and Armando's like, look, 90% shooting, it's inexcusable. That's not us. That's on us. Teams are going to get hot sometimes. They're going to hit tough shots, but 9 for 10 is them. It was on them. RJ said the same thing. He said they took their foot off the gas and took their foot off the pedal. Armando said the same thing. Cormac said the same thing. So they're recognizing what happened. Now, again, I think Louisville deserves some credit because this is a team that's a program that's just downtrodden right now. There's a lot of it's unrecognizable from what I've seen almost my entire life, which is a shame. And the league needs Louisville to get back to being what Louisville was for 5 decades, 6 decades. And they were that team for a while tonight. Sky Clark, a kid that Carolina recruited for a while, he played really, really well. So that they get some credit, but Carolina also gets a lot of the blame. That was the worst stretch of basketball. That was the most unfocused stretch of basketball from this team I've seen since before the Bahamas. They had some periods in games where they weren't great at times. Against Florida State, they weren't great, but Florida State was playing well. I think Florida State's a better team than Louisville. They got more talent. They got more length that can bother Carolina at times. So that was more the issue then. This was a simple matter of the Tar Heels not being what they were coming out of the gate to start the game. Everything that they took with them onto the floor for the most of the first half, they didn't have with them at all. They're putting their hands in their pockets, and you know, like when you lose your keys, oh my God, where the hell are my keys? It was like their keys, their defense, their rebounding, their getting loose balls, their ball handling, their decision making, all that stuff. They couldn't find it. They had to run back into the kitchen and look under stuff and find it under the fruit basket or something like that. That's where it was, Chelsea. And they eventually found it enough to get out of here with a 16-point win. But that was an ugly stretch. And if you can have an ugly stretch in ACC play, one that's that long and that unbecoming, and still win by 16 points, that's because of the great start and that's because of a great close. So they took care of business. They got a win that even on a night they didn't play well. And it's good for them because maybe I got a text from David Sisk, by the way, during the game. Mm-hmm. And he asked me to ask a question to Hubert about something. I wasn't going to get into it here because Hubert wasn't going to really answer it. But it was about how they're playing some games right now where they're scoring almost at will, and how much of that will remove some of the ruggedness that they used to get through that 3-game stretch and they used to beat Oklahoma. I think it's a great question. It's something that we'll probably have to find out more Saturday in Boston in Chestnut Hill when they play Boston College. But I thought it was an interesting thing, and they used some of that in the end to close. But that's our first glimpse into sort of the laissez-faire kind of way of going about things. Maybe we don't respect Louisville now because we're up 20 and you know they're having all kinds of problems. Nobody likes their coach, and we're Carolina, and suddenly, voila, they didn't have that mental connection, but they got it back. So I think that in the end, Hubert has a lot he can use as a teaching point, even in a 7th straight win.
Absolutely. And, you know, talking about Carolina's explosive start, you know, and then the second half and how Louisville went on that run, Carolina pulled away. But what does that mean for them? You know, seeing how they pull away, you know, they can still get it back, but still they pulled away that had that moment, you know, down. What does that mean for the team?
When you go through a season, all kinds of stuff's going to happen. And teams that become championship teams grow when they're moments in time where someone steps up to give them a huge boost. I will never forget Luke May grabbing 15 rebounds, 2 points, 15 rebounds his sophomore year against Florida State here in the Dean Dome. Florida State was a top 5, top 18. They were really good. They were long. Luke had to play a lot. I think Kenny Meeks may have missed that game. I believe, I'm not 100% sure, but Luke had 15 rebounds, and that was way out of statistical character for him that season. But what happened in Memphis 2 months later? Luke was the MOP of the regional. He had a great game against Butler, of course. He more than hit the shot against Kentucky. He was the most valuable player of the regional. My point is, what Jalen Withers did tonight, that his grit and his skill and his brawn and his get after it was why they got on that run to close it out when it was 55-50. Without his play tonight, with him playing like he did during that stretch in early December, late November, early December, they're in a tussle. So he gave them the massive injection that they needed to get the win. So this is his moment in time that maybe he surfaces down the road, helps him again, perhaps in the NCAA tournament. I think really good teams have, over the course of the long college basketball season, just a game here and a game where it's one of those guys that do that. And Jalen's been playing better lately. I talked to him Saturday after the Syracuse game about being more consistent. And he said it's been a real struggle sort of finding his niche. The other guys found their niches sooner. It's been a struggle for him, but I think he's found it now. And when you saw the way, Chelsea, you were here, you saw how the players reacted to Jalen playing well. Armando constantly in his face and pumping him up and dapping him and all that kind of stuff. That was huge. So wasn't the greatest performance from beginning to end in the world, but when you end up pulling away, you recover from a bad stretch, and you do it when you're led by a guy that comes off the bench, a guy who did it against his old team, a guy who's been searching for his comfort spot within everything else. I think that's a great sign. That's something that they now know that he's got. They knew he had it before because they'd seen it, but it was different at Louisville when you're in a 4-win team last year. Now he did it where there's some pressure to win. Last year, you can go for 18 and 10 in the Louisville game and you lose by 20, whatever. He did it tonight, lifting this team to victory. So this is one of those hang a notch on Jalen Withers. He actually talked to the TV people afterward, which is great. He's another guy. They're going to end up having about eight guys maybe that talk to TV by the end of the season. That's a good sign. That means they played the kind of basketball that leads to victories during the course of the game. So what it means is that his game growing means this team grew. Doesn't matter that they gave up a 24-9 run in the grand scheme of things. What matters is Jalen Withers led them to a victory. Armando handing out assists, Harrison Ingram doing his thing, RJ doing his thing. They got to win. Now they move forward. They're 6-0 in the league. They're 14-3 overall. They got a tough game coming up this weekend in Chestnut Hill. But I think they go into it. They need another road game now, 2 in a row at home. But they go into it after getting another quality game from somebody off the bench. And I think it's huge that it was Jalen Withers. I'm telling you right now, talking to these guys, when I asked them about Jalen, they were all smiles. They loved it. He needed that. He needed to feel more a part of this. And he did it on a night against a team that wore the uniform he had on for the last few years. So I think that that's really, really big.
Absolutely. I mean, what an awesome performance to be able to watch in this. You know, again, 15 points, 10 rebounds?
15 points, 10 rebounds, both highs for him at Carolina.
Yeah.
His career high at Louisville was 20 points. So, and this, I don't know how many minutes he played, but he may have played his most minutes at Carolina as well. He played 20-plus minutes 55 times. I know this because I was digging up stuff for a story we ran earlier this morning. He had 55 times he played 20 or more minutes at Louisville. And this will help people understand how it's been a little bit of a challenge for him because he's coming in here and go look at the minutes played in some games. Go look at Tennessee. Go look at UConn. Look at Florida. There's some games he wasn't playing a whole lot. He was really, really struggling. And then the Kentucky game where he did some nice things and still had some struggles as well. And then Oklahoma didn't play much. And really it started with Charleston Southern when the two Jalens, I think, both scored in double figures. If I'm correct, I think he may have scored double figures that game. And then he started playing well on the road. And what he was doing is each time he went in the game, he was positively impacting the game. Something that Seth Trimble's done all year. Now we're talking 5 straight games where Jalen Withers has positively impacted the game when he's gone in. That's huge. That tells me that he has found that zone. He's found that comfort. He knows that he is now a contributing part of a team that could hang something up here. I don't know what it's going to be, Final Four. It could be maybe something else. I still think they have some work to do before they're a true cut down the Nets team on Monday night in Phoenix, but they're heading in that direction. And having Jalen Withers step up and show everything in his bag tonight the way that he did is a part of that process and everything coming out. So this was a good win because of that. And it's a good win because when you give up a 24-9 run in the ACC, you probably lose a lot of the time, and they didn't. So we'll see what they got Saturday. Saturday's going to be really interesting, Chelsea. It's a big game for them because I've seen really good Carolina teams go into Chestnut Hill and be flat. It's a small arena. It's connected to the football stadium. It's cold in there because there's ice underneath because the BC hockey team draws more than the basketball team. I remember, and I'm going long-winded on here, but I remember it was the championship team in 17, I believe. They were up there. It was either 16 or 17. They were up there. They were top 5. And there were very few BC students. BC was at its worst at that time. Very few BC students even showed up. But as BC continued to hang in the game, by the time they were at the 10-minute mark, it was nip and tuck. The whole student section was full. They just kept slowly trickling in. So Carolina, if there's not a lot of students there to start the game, Carolina's mission will be to make sure no students show up. If they do that, then they'll win comfortably and they'll move on and they'll be 7-0 in the league.
Well, on that note, let's see the energy they bring this Saturday. And again, I'm Chelsea Sipple. This is Andrew Jones. If you like what we do, if you like the coverage, like, subscribe to TarHeelIllustrated.com. We'll be back.
Thanks.